start button and you'll be live now.
Good afternoon, colleagues, and can I start by wishing you all a happy new year. It's good to see you here today at our first cabinet meeting of 2021, so thank you all for joining us here today. We've got quite a busy agenda today, and there's lots of information for us to go through and to discuss, and I'm sure there are a number of items that I would like to discuss in detail with you, and I'm sure that you'd like to discuss some of these items in detail as well. So we'll just start then with item number 1 on our agenda today, which is apologies for absence, and I don't believe we've received any apologies. Has anything come in at the last minute, Anne?
No, Leader.
Okay, thank you very much. We move then to item 2, which is declarations of interest. Does anybody have anything to declare?
No.
No. Okay, thank you then, colleagues. Item number 3 on our agenda today are the minutes of our previous meeting, and you can find these in pages 3 to 16 of your packs. Firstly, can I just confirm that all members have had an opportunity to read the minutes from the December meeting? And if you've all had an opportunity to read these meetings, then is somebody happy to move them as a true record?
So moved, Leader.
Thank you. All members content with that?
Agree.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We move now to item 4 on our agenda, which is the budget and medium-term financial plan for 2021-22, and there's quite substantial information that supports this item and supports this report, and you can find all of this between pages 17 to 132 of the packs. The report itself presents draft budget proposals for 2021-22. It's been the subject of significant work over the past few months, and as I'm sure colleagues will be aware from our previous discussions as a cabinet, this has actually been done within a very challenging context of little or no information from the UK government regarding core and short-term COVID-related funding, and a degree of uncertainty in relation to coming out of Brexit. As you'll all be aware, as a council, we've only received details of our draft revenue support grant on the 22nd of December. And given the uncertainties that I've just mentioned, we were only able to finalise proposals after that. And what I should emphasise, colleagues, is that these are only proposals, and I hope that we can work through some of these today in our meeting and really discuss these at length. Clearly, more work is still required on this, given the higher than expected grant settlement, but a lot of work was done after the settlement so that draft budget can be as comprehensive as possible. The result of this, colleagues, is that, as I'm sure you're aware, we're meeting today to agree to begin the consultation on the budget, whereas in previous years we may have started this process slightly earlier. However, the timetable's been adjusted to accommodate this and to maximise the time available for consultation, so that our residents, our service users and our stakeholders, such as the Independent Fairness Commission, will have a considerable length of time to take part in the consultation. Consultation will begin following our meeting, and what I would ask is that residents, partners and all parties engage fully with this now. You will recall, colleagues, that when I became the leader, one of the things that I was really keen to emphasise with elected members and with members of the public across the whole of Newport is that as a leader I would be listening, and there is an opportunity now through the budget consultation for residents to put forward their views, to share their views with us, and we will be listening to what they have to say. And as an administration, we're committed to a full and comprehensive engagement on this. And that includes our internal processes as well, so that includes scrutiny committees too. Now, as always, all individual proposals, both investments and savings, are listed in the appendices to the report. Those budget savings with service impact are included in detail, and the report provides links to the detail of other budget savings. We're specifically consulting on those with service impact, and we'll take all of the comments received on these into consideration before we finalise our decisions in February. So I really need to make this clear, colleagues, in our meeting today. This is a public meeting. To make this absolutely clear to the public that no final decisions will be made on any of the proposals until we receive the results of the consultation. Other proposals which have no impact on the public and don't need to go out to external consultation will be agreed here today for implementation by heads of service. So if I can just turn now to some of the detail in the reports that we have in front of us, and I'm sure colleagues that you'd like to pick up on some of these yourselves as we go through. Just to give some context, inflationary costs increase amount to just over 5 million next year, and is around this level every year based on our planning assumptions. However, this year there's significant uncertainty on pay inflation for next year, with the UK Chancellor both announcing a one-year pay freeze other than for the lowest paid, and also that local government should determine its own pay arrangement. In addition, teachers' pay is determined by relevant Welsh Government ministers. As this is a high risk budget area, we have made provision for inflationary increases here, as noted in the report. For 21-22 specifically, the Council is currently planning to invest almost £8 million in the draft budget, over and above an allowance for pay and pricing inflation. Now, more details on proposed investments are included in Appendix 1, and some of those key items include a significant investment in school budgets, a £2.6 million investment in the capital programme, £1.5 million to cover increased demand in social care demand for both children's and adult services, and significant investment to deliver the promises set out in our corporate plan, such as the delivery of digital aspirations and a new household waste recycling centre. This budget, colleagues, ensures that our manifesto promises can be delivered to the people of Newport. In terms of savings, the figure for next year, 21-22, is around 3.3 million, of which just over £600,000 have already been agreed in previous budget decisions, and 2.7 million are new proposals. Of this, we've identified just under £1 million for consultation, but we've also worked really hard to identify as many savings with little or no impact, and these amount to around 1.7 million. We'll be consulting, or certainly as a cabinet, we'll be discussing these and making an agreement to consult on the budget savings here in front of us, not just for next year, but for a small amount that's identified for the year following that as well. On top of this, there's a proposed council tax increase of 5%. As the report highlights, Newport has a low council tax, and even with an appropriate Welsh Government financial settlement, we need to be mindful of this, and we need to ensure that we maintain and in some areas increase our capacity to support our most vulnerable residents, invest in our infrastructure and support our ambition for the city regeneration. The need and ambition to invest in services that in the city means that we will need to increase council tax and find savings. This budget isn't just about council tax. It's balanced by savings, and it also includes significant investment within service delivery. Before we move forward to the recommendations of the report, I'd just like to pause here and offer colleagues an opportunity to comment on this as we see it today. So, Councillor Rahman, would you like to comment?
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I just wanted to sort of point out a few figures in the report, but it's important to sort of, as you say, put things in context for our residents, because we are essentially going out to them for their views and opinions on this budget. Everything that's been put forward to us is going to our residents as well, so they know what we're having to deal with. But I just want to point out one important thing. The report does mention in the last 5 years we made £35 million worth of savings. Well, just to add further sort of context to that, since I was elected in 2012, when we've had a Labour administration, we've actually made £74.8 million worth of savings, worth of cuts, and on top of that, we're still we still have one of the lowest council tax rates in Wales. We're potentially looking at additional £9.9 million worth of cuts by 2022-2023, but council tax at the moment equates to only 24% of the council's total income. So it's easy to assume that, you know, council tax and the cuts are you know, the underlying figure of all these budget reports that we have. But we're still able to provide over 800 services to our residents. 156,000 people are still receiving services and received services through the pandemic as well. So it's easy to get lost in cuts and council tax rises, but there is a reason for that based on how much the government has given us, or not given us, I'm afraid. I mean, £74.8 million not given to us since 2012, but we're still able to serve 156,000 residents. Yes, not as we did in the past, but we're still able to provide a level service to them. The investments as well, that is key. I think, I mean, it always gets forgotten in these sort of conversations that we have when we're talking about budgets, but we're investing in education in schools, we're investing in social services, and in the last cabinet meeting we agreed to go out on consultation on the new proposal for replacement of Newport Centre. I mean, on top of all these cuts that we're talking about, and we're only going to be getting a few back, not even a lot of income back from council tax, but only a few, we're still able to provide level service and investment to our residents. The other point I just want to raise quickly, and I think, you know, it's really important that I raise this, because in light of what's going on in the world, we saw in America what happens when lies and false truths go out, how it angers people, and they start believing these sort of falsehoods. I just want to point out that during the pandemic, we were still able to collect people's bins. We were still able to go out and provide a level of service to them that they would have expected, whether there was or wasn't a pandemic. You know, on top of all of the things that we've done, we are doing our best, and it's easy to knock the council and easy to knock our officers, but they're the ones that have been risking their lives, and let's face it, they have been risking their lives to serve our communities. And I think it's important that we mention that in the light of what we're talking about budget cuts, because it is going to affect them more than it's going to affect anyone else. And the other point is, I know how tough it has been for residents. No one has to tell me how tough it has been for residents. Mainly has been greatly suffered by this pandemic. I've got friends and families who are currently suffering and going through tackling, you know, fighting COVID right now. I've lost family members, and some of those family members were the breadwinners. They were the ones that got the income into the household. I know we're proposing council tax rise, but as I said, that still equates to less than about 24% of the council's income. We're not asking, you know, to cover all the cuts that we've had to make. No way will we do that. But there is support available for our most vulnerable residents. And I would urge all those residents watching this or hearing this right now, if you have been affected by this pandemic, if your income has decreased as a result of this pandemic, there are grants available through the council, and please apply for it, because it's there for you and you alone. It's for the residents of this city. So we're not going to force anything onto a family that's been greatly affected, but we are willing to provide the level of support. So as you say, Leader, you've changed the culture of this council and this authority to one that listens to our residents, but more importantly, you changed it to one that cares for our residents as well and is willing to support it in a time of need. At the same time, looking at how we can streamline our services, but provide this same level of service that we have throughout all these years where we've made such substantial amount of cuts. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Rahman. Councillor Truman.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I agree with everything the previous speaker has said, and the challenges we've had to face for the last 12 months. All of us have been challenging, and I hope they're never repeated again. And we will get through this pandemic. We know that, but I think this budget demonstrates that we are investing in services, because we need those services, particularly when we come out of this pandemic. It'll be more important than it's ever been. As has been previously said, the workforce have stepped up to the plate. They've demonstrated with their actions how much they've worked, how hard they've worked, and against a lot of challenges. And they've done that right throughout the council. All the services have done that, and we all thank them. But we've got to keep investing in services where we can, because all these services are very important. And for me, they've been more important now than they've ever been, because the challenges, people suffering post-COVID, the effects of COVID, all these challenges come to local councils, and they come into us, so we've got to meet those challenges. This is a listening budget. Is for people to look at it, have a look at it, see what they think, and let us know about it. Officers' jobs are to put savings forward, and it's our job to look at it and see then what we're going to do, put out to the public, which we're doing now, and wait for their returns and see what we do. But never before has any council anywhere, right up through all the country, they're all having to face these difficult challenges. Some councils have already gone bankrupt. We haven't, touched wood. But as I say, we will come out of this pandemic, but we need the services to operate what happens with the effects of when we come out of it. So yes, welcome the comments of all our residents, and I hope they all respond to this. And as I say, investing in people, investing in services. That's the message.
Thank you, Councillor Truman. Deputy Leader.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I'd like to draw your attention to page 42 and the investment of the waste enforcement officers. Given that we have the best recycling figures in Wales, if not in the whole of the UK, some may say, OK, well, why do we need waste enforcement officers? We still need to further the work around certain areas where recycling rates need to be improved. The residents of Newport have done an exceptional job embracing the need to recycle for our future, and my personal thanks to them for that. And as Councillor Rahman has already stated, of the 800 services we provide to 156,000 people through 69,000 households, refuse, both domestic and garden, along with recycling collections, have not stopped, as they have in some areas in the UK and all throughout this pandemic. So I am pleased to say that we will actively look to further the efforts on this with the use of these officers throughout the city. And then the next one down on winter maintenance, a planned increased investment to keep our roads safe is welcome. We have seen only in the last week where temperatures have struggled to climb above freezing, this service in operation on our roads at night, although this usually happens when many of us are sleeping. These grit runs, along with all the resources needed to fund them, are an essential item for our safety. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Deputy Leader, and I'd like to extend my thanks to the hard work that the teams have been doing as well. I mean, this is absolutely essential service provision, and it really is an outstanding effort by all of our colleagues within the City Council that they've managed to maintain those services. And I would echo your thanks to the citizens of Newport, Deputy Leader, in terms of the efforts that they've made with recycling. It really is outstanding, and we thank them for that. And thank you for the leadership that you've shown in continuing to improve our performance in these areas. Thank you. I welcome the comments. Councillor Davis. You're on mute, Deb. Okay, do you want to have a little look at that, and I'll bring some other members in. I'll come back to you. Okay. So Councillor Harvey.
Thanks, Leader. Obviously, I echo everything that has been said. We are in the worst situation since the war. Quite rightly, our bins are being emptied every week, regardless. Our waste savers are collecting all our recycling, and I have had a few complaints about waste savers. My answer to that is they are out there handling waste and picking it up as best they can, as quick as they can. They're doing the very best, and in my honest opinion, they're doing a sterling job, as are our bin men. They are out in amongst an airborne virus collecting our rubbish. They are risking themselves every time they go there. And we all say thank you to the staff all the time. I specifically want to thank our staff on the ground, those that are out there doing what they do to keep us safe on our roads, to empty our waste and rubbish and take it away. When you see what's happened in Cardiff with their waste compared to what happens here in Newport with ours, I think we've had a first-class service run by first-class staff, and sometimes and quite frequently they can be forgotten about because, oh, it's only the bin men. They're not only the bin men, they're not only waste savers, they're not only cleaners, they are keeping us up running, and I take my hat off to them. They have been absolutely first class and outstanding. I just would like people now to come back and answer this and tell us which way they want us to go. Thanks, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Thank you. Councillor Giles. You're on mute.
Apologies. Yeah, sorry. I'm a bit slow today, not quite sure but why that is. Anyway, yeah, obviously, I of course, I'm in total agreement with everything that's been said so far. We've always been committed to and remain committed to do everything we possibly can for public service to ensure that our residents have everything that we need. And of course, we're also very aware of the difficult time that parents, carers and education staff have at the moment. I know with the latest update from Mark Drakeford today, it is such a difficult time for them. So our commitment, which is always 100%, continues. And if we look at pages 39 to 46, everyone will have seen that. There are examples there of our investments in education. So we're looking at nursery investment with bubble classes. We've got Rogerstone has got additional places for autistic spectrum disorder pupils. You've got amalgamation of Kimberley and Fair Oak nurseries. And you have a Scorbrin Darrow satellite provision, which assists, of course, with the outer county places, which we've been trying to tackle for a number of years. And there's been a huge demand on our budget, and that's proving very successful. And increasing the number of breakfast clubs, which of course is that vital provision for those most needy children in our communities, and we've committed to that. So we've also got commitment as well, of course, to new builds and new schools with Ysgol Gyfun Gwent Ysgoed. It continues to increase its pupils across the years. We got the new Llanwern School that's due to be developed, and Glanllyn that's just been completed. And the planned development on the Whitehead site to enable a new Welsh medium primary. So it's our commitment to Welsh medium as well. And that will benefit as well Tredegar Park Primary, because there'll be that rather complex manoeuvring of schools in that area, and in order to ensure that they all have the most appropriate and best provision for the youngsters there. And we've also got expansion of nursery provision at St Michael's, Marshfield and Pentraporth. So I'll also add some comments, Leader, when we get to the capital report, if you like, with regard to schools. But I think that's just an example of our full commitment to do the best we possibly can. Thank you.
That's great, Councillor Giles. Thank you for that, and thank you for providing us there with an overview of our investment in education. I mean, not only have we been able to address the schools' pressures this year with our budget, but we're also making that significant capital investment, which is improving things. It's not just about now, is it? It's about the future. So thank you very much for that. Councillor Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Naturally endorse what everyone else said about this. This is always a painful thing for me. It seems that just after we found, don't quote me on figures here, but you know, £10 million of cuts last year because of austerity, we immediately started, it seems, to look at this year's budget. We've been looking at this in detail in every corner of the authority to try to see where we can find savings. Let's call them savings. We mean cuts, of course, that don't affect how we deliver the services. And I mean, this is the juggling act that we perform. I hope that the public will look at all the detail and not just look at the headlines that have been picked out by the media and by some of the opposition, and they do engage. We've got very sophisticated ways now that we can engage. People can still write in using the old-fashioned mail. They can use the internet. They can use my Newport. They can use the bus Wi-Fi. There's a whole host of ways that they can engage and let us know what we are doing wrong and what we're doing right, and you know, and how perhaps we could maybe look at other areas that we haven't even considered yet. So that's all I hope that happens. As you do, Leader, let's engage with the public. Let's hope they engage with us.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Mayor. I'm just going to go back to Councillor Davis now. Councillor Davis, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Leader. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Fantastic. Yes. Wonderful. Okay, thank you. I certainly want to agree with my colleagues and commend this budget. I think the key to this budget is it's a listening budget. It's going out to consultation, and we also absolutely listen to what residents have to say, and it's a key priority for residents to respond to any concerns that they may have from the proposals putting forward. However, what I do want to do is to commend one budget investment that one of the many budget investments that we're actually making, and that's to the Empty Properties Fund. I want to describe and put some more detail behind that so residents can actually understand. This is actually it's £150,000 of seed funding, so it's returnable, and the intention is actually many of you are aware that some of our empty properties within Newport urgently need work on them, and they've sat there for many years with owners not actually taking any action for them. This money will allow us as a local authority to take action and actually see some investment in those properties. Once those properties are brought back into being and back into life, that money then can be reinvested and we can move on. It's a project and a purpose to actually regenerate and make our city a much place to live in. So it's certainly a proposal that I do commend. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Davis. So there are a number of recommendations in the report itself. So it's quite there are quite a number of recommendations that we need to go through, and rightly so, given that the volume of information that we've got. I think it's quite important that we work our way through these, but before I do that, I'm just going to ask the Cabinet Member for Social Services whether there are any comments that he would like to make. Councillor Cochrane, would you like to come in?
Thank you very much, Leader. Can I make your apologies? I missed looked at the time, so I do apologise for that. I think the two areas that might cause us a little bit of a problem, but having looked at it and delved into it, I just think that there are issues that we should have been addressing earlier on. Now, if I can take Cambridge House, even if it wasn't looking at savings now, I think we would be looking at Cambridge House as something that we should be closing down a long time ago, to be perfectly honest. It's not the most appropriate place for a children's home. It's right by a park, it's in the centre of town, and it's something over the years I do know that issues have been raised in the local locality. So I think even without the savings that we would have to make now, I just honestly believe that Cambridge House will be on the agenda for me coming to Cabinet to say this is something we should be closing down anyway. Having said that, I don't want people to think that we're moving in an area where we're going to be closing down our residential homes, because our residential homes is something that we've got to be really proud of in Newport, because we are actually increasing our residential homes. We started looking forward to increase our residential homes to 3, and this is about bringing the children from outside of area, because it was costing us an absolute fortune, going up to 2 million plus for all our children that were outside of area. Now, these children from outside of area, some of them were costing in the region of up to £8,000 to £10,000 per week, and I'll repeat that, £8,000 to £10,000 per week. And I met the officer from Social Services who was looking after children, and when I was discussing this with them, I was saying, well, you know, why are we doing this? Why can't we do our own? And she said, well, we could. And so we had this light bulb moment, so to speak, and we thought, well, why can't we do it ourselves? So in fairness to Cabinet, going back, I think it was last year, we decided that we would possibly put something forward for spend to save, and Cabinet agreed for a £1.5 million investment in 3 homes. Fortunately for us, ICF, through the Regional Partnership Board, have financed our first home, which was Rose Cottage. That has been a total success, to be perfectly honest, Rose Cottage. And in fact, from all the outcomes we've had there, we were recommended by the Social Care Awards to go forward in the final. We didn't actually win it, but obviously we were highly commended. So I think that's been absolutely a first class for us to do something like that. And in fact, our officers and myself then had to do a presentation to all the Cabinet members for social services in Wales of what we were doing, because there was a big push to bring some of these children back from outside of area, from all authorities. And I think we can say that we led the way on that. And it was one of the best presentations. Cabinet members were coming up to me and saying that it was absolutely superb what we were doing. An example of what we did in Rose Cottage, one girl there was I'm not sure whether this was in Glasgow or somewhere like that, stupidly. No child should be that far away from home. And we brought her back with Rose Cottage. She was there for 3 to 4 months, and then she started learning to ride a bike. She then put a pantomime on for the staff. She's now gone back home with her mother in England. She passed her exams and she's going to college. Now that girl was costing us £8,000 per week. And that just shows you what we can do. And it's not just about the building now. We've changed the whole philosophy of our residential homes. What's happened in Rose Cottage, where the children came back, there was 11-year-olds talking there about who is my key worker? When am I going to have a key working sessions? Where's the office? We've changed all that concept, and I think what's happening now, it's all first name terms with staff. There's no locks on the kitchen. There's no office there. It's actually just like the normal home. If they want to go and take an apple or a glass of orange, they just go into the kitchen and do that. And all these children now that they weren't attending school, now they are attending school. And so that's the first one we did. Then we moved on. We had more funding from ICF. Then we've got another home that we started. That's going to come on stream in February. And what we're doing then, we've had a tenancy of one of our farms, relinquished it, and then we'll be moving then to another home. So that's 3 that we'll be putting forward. So when we talk about closing Cambridge House, it's not as if we're closing down our residential homes, we're actually expanding, and I think it's going to be better for the outcomes, and that's going to be superb. I'm not too worried really about the Cambridge House, although it looks as though we're closing the residential homes. I think if you look at the background of it all, I think it's something that we should have been doing a long time ago, and I think it's something that I'm not too worried about it. But you know, it's on the face of it, and unless you look into the details of it all, some people think that we're just closing a residential home for children, but clearly we're not on that one. The other one that I was a little bit concerned at in the beginning, if I was totally honest with you, and that was the day centres at Bringlass. Now, the day centre at Bringlass, it functions there with mental health, older people with dementia, and people with the high end of disabilities through learning disabilities as well as physical. And well, on the mental health side of things, the mental health side will be going down to, the recommendation is going down to Treager House, which is a lovely setting anyway, to be perfectly honest, a very calm setting, and that would be quite good. And they've got a great experience down at Growing Space anyway to do that. The older peoples with dementia, there's facilities there for them to go into Spring Gardens down in Pill, and I think they've already gone down there, some of them. So the day centre side of that can go in there. When we had the high end of people with physical disabilities and learning disabilities, they are the high end of the spectrum on that, and I was a bit concerned about that. But if I can give you an example, and I'm sorry to go on about this, but when I first was given the sort of the portfolio of social services, one of the first meetings I had was the closing of New Willows in Lamwern. And it was really a meeting I had in the YMCA with all the parents and families and the actual children they brought there. And New Willows was a home for children with autism and learning disabilities. It was a lovely home, but it was just like a normal house. It didn't have the facilities, they didn't have en suites, it was all shared bathrooms and toilets and things like that. And it wasn't acceptable. So I suggested, well, why didn't you use Centrica Lodge? And they nearly took my head off when I suggested that, because Centrica Lodge wasn't fit for purpose at the time, and they wouldn't want to send their children there anyway. So I went there to Centrica and I looked at it, and really it was poor kitchens. It was the place was needed a total refurbishment. Again, we were very fortunate with ICF through the Regional Partnership Board. We revamped the whole building there, and then what happened when it was all finished? One of the things I made it clear, I wanted en suites in there. I wanted the kitchen refurbished, and I wanted the garden doing. Now, if you think about it, even if we went to a basic B&B, we would all expect an ensuite. And I expect if we're going to put our children and our adults in there, they should expect the same as well. So we also changed the organisation, and CPI took over. And when they went there, lots of the parents didn't want to go there. First of all, when they did go there, I haven't had one complaint in all the years, nearly, I think it's about 8 years now. I haven't had one complaint of the parents going there to Centrica Lodge with CPI, and that was the organisation. I'm only telling you that because if Bringlass Day Centre does close, the organisation that will be taking over these children will be CPI. Now, they purchased the old Ringwood House site off the council. They spent an absolute fortune there. Now, I went there to look round that place, and I felt that I was looking for all the negatives. When I went there, I didn't find any negatives, to be perfectly honest. I went there and it was warm, welcoming. All the activity rooms, I couldn't believe what was there. The facility, they had a hot tub there with lights and music there. They had an outside activity area. It was superb. And when I looked at the menu there, they actually got a chef in there, and it looked, there was 5-star menus that was being put on. So I was taken back, to be honest. I know the organisation was quite good. I think it's going to be something that we've got to take very steadily with the parents, because obviously they don't like change, and they're very concerned about their sons and daughters. But it's already been used by a lot of these parents anyway. So I do think that a bit of negotiations. I think the families need to go and see the facilities there at Ringwood House. So I've changed my view on that. I didn't think I would, if I was honest. So so I think that's the two there that you know, we've had this try and make savings of £1.5 million. It's not easy. This goes on year after year, but we can't afford to take staff out of the organisation. We can't afford not to lose any more social workers. We just can't. And if that's the case, we might as well close the doors tomorrow, because we just can't do it. So those are the two areas I wanted to explain to you. I say the others I think are fairly easy to go through, and I wouldn't worry about. But it's a long-winded round. But I think you need to know the background of, I think, the organisation that will be taking over for the high-end spectrum of our residents there. I got no worry about CPI looking after them, and I just think I was pleasantly surprised when I went there. So, but it's you know, it's all consultation. It's out for consultation with parents, so we'll have to listen to their views and all that. But it's something that I feel that I can go along with.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Cochrane. I think what you've done there is give us a really good overview, some really good examples of the positive impact that the modernisation of service delivery can have for some of our most vulnerable service users with the highest level of need. And I hope that the public and anybody kind of watching our meeting today or tuning into our meeting at another time can listen to that and feel really reassured that whilst we continue to modernise, the needs of our service users are very much at the centre of our thoughts and the centre of our considerations, certainly within relation to that. So we've had an opportunity to go through some of the papers here, and everybody's had an opportunity to read them. I'd just like to really, for a moment, before I move us to the proposal itself, I'd really just like to reflect on some of the comments that you've made today, colleagues. So I think Councillor Truman has made a really important point here when he said to us today that it's our job to consider these proposals. So it's our job as a cabinet to consider these proposals that have been put forward to us by the officers and consider whether we think that we would like to put these out to consultation with the public. And that's really important because it is an important decision to make. And we've heard Councillor Cochrane follow this really with his explanation of why it is he's supporting some proposals within his portfolio area going out to consultation, because he's actually seen the evidence of how investment in the modernisation of these services can deliver benefits for our service users. So, I mean, Councillor Truman and Councillor Cochrane, you know, with your experience and your service as councillors, we really respect and value your comments. Certainly as a cabinet, they're very helpful to us, and really that helps to frame our decision making here today. It's absolutely important that we continue to modernise without any of our savings impacting directly in a negative way on our service users. And I think as we've discussed this, I mean, Councillor Davis, you've highlighted that one of the proposals in here, one of our investment proposals for a property fund, will make a significant impact on our environment throughout Newport. It gives us an opportunity to really tackle some of these buildings that have been left to go into disrepair by their owners, and really take that on. And take up that mantle and take that on behalf of the people of Newport who really want to see something done about that. And this is the opportunity for us to take that decision, or well, to get the views of the public on that before we move forward. Now, when the Welsh Government issued the draft budget statement, the First Minister was very clear in terms of the budget and what it meant, and certainly the distribution of funding as far as Welsh Government were concerned. The Welsh Government is very clear that this budget is about investment in education, social care and public services. And I'd suggest to you all, colleagues, that what we're proposing to do here in the City of Newport is exactly that. It is about investing in those service areas. Now, as we've been through this, we've seen some really good examples of where we've invested, and the Deputy Leader has explained to us, you know, the benefits of continued investment in some areas of city services where we've seen great success and our performance is the best in the country. And it's important that we've got that evidence base to help us with our decisions. Councillor Rahman has been very, very clear about how our services have been maintained throughout this pandemic, throughout this grave public health emergency. We've maintained service provision. Other authorities have not been able to maintain the levels that we have, and we need to be mindful of that, because that's a reflection of the commitment of our officers and our colleagues across the whole of the council to service provision for the people of Newport. But you are absolutely right, and I think you know, the emphasis that you've all made here, colleagues, and the emphasis that we would make collectively, is that these decisions are not taken lightly. As a cabinet, we've got a moral and ethical responsibility to consider the potential impact of all of these decisions, and that is really important. And you know, Councillor Rahman, you highlighted when you started to speak on this, the impact of false information and what that can do on public opinion, and how that can skew public opinion. And in its very worst example, we've seen that in the United States this week, where it's actually been an attack on the democracy of that proud nation. And we've all watched in horror and dismay when we've seen what has happened in America, because some of the media, some commentators, some political activists, even some post holders themselves, have continued to spread misinformation. So what I would say to our public in Newport, and particularly to any media coverage of our budget, please take the time to read the business cases and consider the points that are made there. We're keen to hear everybody's voice. We really are keen to hear voices on this, but I think it's really important that people look at the evidence base, not salacious headlines that really do detract from the actual facts, but take the time. The information is all there, it's all in the public domain, it's all there on our website, and we welcome those considered comments from the public. We really do. On that, and on the role of elected members, I'd like to be really clear here that these decisions are not taken lightly. So I'm sat here listening to this discussion and listening to your comments, colleagues, and I've got a number of sheets of paper in front of me. I've got a huge pile of papers that are the budget investments, and I've got a far slimmer pile which are the proposed savings. Now, the report itself asks us to make a decision on a number of points. There are 6 elements that we're asked to make a decision on today, and the first of those are the budget savings proposals as set out in Appendix 2. of the summary table and Appendix 5 of the detailed proposals. On this first point, before I ask you for a comment on this, I'd like to reflect on that point about this actually being really important, and these decisions are not taken lightly. And because these decisions are not taken lightly, I would just like to pause before we go through and approve these consultation savings. I would just like to really thank Councillor Giles, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Spencer, Councillor Hurahan, Councillor Davis and Councillor Harvey and Councillor Jevons for raising with me as the Chair of the Cabinet the potential impact of the proposed savings which are highlighted in this report, and that is the proposal STR 212207 to introduce parking charges to 3 park and countryside car parks. I'd like to thank you all for coming to me and sharing with me your concerns about the potential that this might have in terms of the impact on your residents and on service users. Now, I'm happy to listen to you as representatives of the people and listen to what you've got to say. And as Chair of the Cabinet, I would like to propose that we do not consult with the public on this proposal. I don't know if Councillor Harvey, as the Cabinet member with responsibility for this area, if you'd like to follow that up with any comments.
Thank you, Leader. I can't thank you enough, because this, as we've debated it, we've looked at it and we've gone all around the houses with it, this really shows that you've listened, you've taken on board what we've said, you've agreed with us, and quite frankly, I feel this is the right thing to do, Leader, and I can't thank you enough for that, and neither will my residents. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Councillor Giles, did you want to comment?
Yes, thank you very much, Leader. This is really good news and I'm very appreciative of it. You know, those that know Christchurch Car Park and people from across Newport, of course, you know, visit it. I mean, it's well used for outdoor access. It's beautiful views for those who are less mobile, and of course access to St Julian's Woods for a fabulous walk as far as Killeen Road. And I think in these days, you know, we don't want people mixing, but that outdoor access has never been more important. I do know people who might take their car quite a short journey, you know, within Newport, but they can sit and look at that car park and enjoy the view and have a break from what's happening, you know. And of course, the issue, and I thoroughly agreed with Councillor Davis that mentioned when we had our discussions about this, was the parking problems. You know, it's a busy road. You've got the cemetery, and then you have the village and the pub. And any parking issues along there were going to be, you know, really troublesome. So I'm very grateful. This is really good news, and thank you very much.
Thank you, colleagues. I'd just like to add my thanks. I apologise, it was remiss of me there. I'd just like to add my thanks to Councillor Mayor and Councillor Whitehead for raising with me the potential issues that the introduction of any parking charges may bring at Morgan's Pond. So thank you both to those members for that as well. And I think really that encapsulates the whole purpose of consultation. The officers present these recommendations to us, the recommendations for savings, but ultimately we are the decision makers. And as a listening administration, it's really important that we base our decisions on the evidence and we consider the impact that they will have. So if you're content, colleagues, we will remove that particular item. So are colleagues content to remove that?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Leader. Again,
Thank you, Leader.
a listening
Absolutely.
leader.
Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
So on that, then, on the proposal, to agree the draft proposals. On the first point, the savings proposals in Appendix 2 and Appendix 5, are we content that they should go out to public consultation with the exception of the proposal that we have just agreed to remove?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Thank you, Leader.
Yeah.
Yes, it's fine.
Okay. Now, the second point that we have to agree on is the implementation of the delegated decisions, and they're all set out in Appendix 3, and those decisions will be taken by the heads of service with immediate effect following the usual council decision-making processes. Are members content to agree that?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you, Leader.
The third point that we need to agree is to agree to consult with the citizens of Newport on a proposed council tax increase of 5%. And what that means is a weekly increase of between 77 pence and £1.02 for properties in bands A to C, and these are the most common bands that we have here in Newport, and that's set out in paragraphs 3.21 to 3.24 of our report. So and I think it's important to highlight when considering that proposal, as colleagues have already mentioned here today, and Councillor Rahman, you raised this, we do have the council tax reduction scheme available for all those residents who are concerned about this as well. There is support for people who struggle to afford this. So are we content to consult on that particular proposal?
Yes, please, Leader. Thank you.
The fourth point that we need to agree as a cabinet is the proposed fees and charges. And before I ask you for your agreement on this, I'd just like to highlight or rather clarify a point, because on the point of misinformation and media coverage, I just like to make it abundantly clear that there are no proposed increase to car parking charges in council car parks in that schedule. So in Appendix 7, are members content to agree that?
Yes, thank you, Leader.
Yeah.
Now, moving on to a more significant and weighty document, the fifth point that we need to agree are our budget investments. And we've heard today from Cabinet members about the benefit of the proposed investments within their portfolio areas and what that means for the citizens of Newport. Are you content to agree that point?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Thank you. The final point that we need to agree on, colleagues, is the budget investment provision in schools, which is based on an assumed pay increase, which will enable us to provide for a fully funded increased funding requirement. Specifically here, we need to agree to confirm and finalise this when there's certainty on the teacher's pay, and we won't be able to do this until later in the year. So you consent to agree to set aside this until we have that certainty?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So all of the proposals contained there, with the amendment that we've agreed to the first aspect of that, the Cabinet has now agreed, and that means that the budget proposal can go out to consultation with the public. There are a number of points that we're asked to note, colleagues, and I'll just run through these. So we're asked to note the position on developing a balanced budget, particularly in respect of the late announcement from Welsh Government and in respect of the final funding settlement. So this still continues to be a work in progress, and hopefully we'll be in a firmer position by the time we come to agree this finally. We're also being asked to note the medium-term financial projections and the projections, and that those projections actually do contain investments required to implement the corporate plan promises. So to be absolutely clear, we have made provision there to ensure that we meet the commitments that we've made in our corporate plan. Also to note that fairness and equality impact assessments have been completed for all of those proposals that require one, and again they're available, they're in the public domain and available to be viewed there. And of course, we've discussed here, there is a final point that we need to note here, and that is that we do need to prioritise the development of a strategic change programme in order to develop a long-term sustainable financial footing for our services. So we've discussed the modernisation, how that does in fact benefit our service users, how we can continue to do that, and we need to continue with that strategic approach to that. So are members content to note all of those?
Yes.
Yep.
Can I say, I'd really like to thank you all very much for the time that you've put into this particular item. I know that it's very difficult, and it's been made particularly difficult this year, not just by the pandemic, but also in terms of the late settlement, and it's been a very difficult time frame for us. So I'd like to thank you all for your considered comments and your contributions today on that basis. What I would say to officers is I'd really like to thank all of their officers for the work that they've done in developing these proposals. And we have, as a cabinet, we have considered your proposals carefully, and for the most part we are supportive, and we welcome public comment on these. But there are some proposals which we don't feel that we can put forward to the public, having listened to our colleagues on this, and I'm sure that officers will understand that. So I think that concludes our discussion on that particular item, and we can move now to item number 5 on our agenda today, which is the November Revenue Budget Monitor, and this can be found on pages 133 to 156 of the report. So this report deals with the revenue budget as at the November position, and it confirms the latest forecast to be an underspend of £2.7 million. And this is an increase on the September position. It reflects the improved forecast position within schools, and also lower than anticipated demand probably being experienced with adult social care as a consequence of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Other in-year underspends are linked to some one-off savings this year due to mainly delays in recruitment and far less expenditure on things like travel, subsistence and printing costs that we would normally incur if we were running from a centrally located building. As has been the case throughout the year, the forecasts make the assumption that the current areas of spend and lost income in relation to the COVID-19 situation will continue to be reimbursed and supported by the Welsh Government. In terms of key issues, undelivered MTFP savings represents the largest individual budget issue at this time. So the performance on forecast delivery of savings has been impacted by the COVID-19 situation. Any undelivered savings at the end of the year will still need to be delivered as soon as possible in the following year. So that will, however, be in addition to any new savings that needs to be found. So in that sense, while we do need to continue with our savings programme, it will present challenges. So I'd ask the Chief Executive, Heads of Service and Cabinet members to continue to focus on these now, as much as is reasonably possible, to ensure that we can achieve these. Within the level of forecast overspending across schools has been an area of significant concern across the year. We're now faced with a forecast underspend, as the report shows. Forecasts have been reviewed in light of the impact of the pandemic and the reimbursement that the schools will receive from the Welsh Government Hardship Fund. It's pleasing to note that the school revenue budget forecasts have improved, and this will increase the overall school reserves to nearly 1.7 million. But I am mindful that school budgets continue to be under significant strain. As the report shows, many schools are still projecting an overspend in the current year. Our officers continue to work with individual schools on their financial recovery plans, and it's bearing good results and is ongoing. And I'd really like to pause at this point to actually thank our head teachers, and thank our education colleagues in the schools, and also thank our governing bodies. As we're all aware as school governors ourselves, school governors are volunteers. It is a voluntary role, but it's a role that carries with it significant responsibility. So I'd like to thank all of our head teachers, our education professionals, and our volunteer school governors for the time and effort that they've put into this. Thank you so much for working with us. We really value your support, and I think this is a really good example of co-production moving forward, how we're working together to ensure that we do the best that we possibly can. So to all of our schools, thank you. Now, the forecast shows that the council is in a good position to meet the challenges that we face. More work is required and is underway to review what unavoidable catch-up spending we'll need to make next year, and this will need to be taken into account, in assessing the uses of the underspend. This will allow the Cabinet to consider how best to utilise the underspend. Clearly, we're mindful of the ongoing risks of COVID and uncertainty at this point of the full package of support the councils will receive next year for unavoidable COVID-related costs, and the lost income that we'll face as a result of this, certainly within the first quarter of next year and possibly into the first half of next year. Brexit is also potentially going to be an impact, as much of the detail of Brexit is still unknown, and this will have an impact. So going forward, these will be key issues for us to consider, as well as other Cabinet priorities and the usual need for one-off funds to support projects. We'll continue to consider these in detail in due course, but the position at the moment allows us flexibility in order to assess the above issues. And I'll pause at that point, comments, to invite, colleagues, to invite any comments that you may have on the revenue budget monitor. Would anybody like to comment on that? Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Leader. It's really just to support what you said in regard to schools, and to thank them. They are doing such a fantastic job, and schools to have this additional pressure in trying to balance their budgets. They work so hard, and it's a huge worry for them. This is not something that's taken lightly by anyone. You know, officers, obviously myself, yourself, the Cabinet, everyone is aware of this situation. So I really just wanted to say thank you to the schools, as you have, just reiterate that, head teachers, the governors, the staff, on top of everything else they've got. And I know I've said this, and you know, this is the approach that we have taken because we're a compassionate and caring administration, and have always been so, to say that, you know, we do support them and we will continue to support them in every way we possibly can. It is the financial situation that we are in. Nothing is more monitored than schools, no other department. So you've got Estin, EAS, all these people, everyone looking at it all the time. So there is no pointy finger going out. We thank them for their efforts on top of everything else, and we will continue to do everything we possibly can to support them. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Giles. Councillor Truman.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Just on some of the challenges, and you've mentioned Brexit, which is a biggie, isn't it? But where I'm particularly concerned with my portfolio, and I mentioned this before, is the ambiguity around what will be the regulations, the new regulations. Now, to be fair to the Welsh Government, they provided us with the finances for training the officers on these new regulations, but there's still a lot of ambiguities in the system, and a lot of clarification is needed, because in Newport, as we all know, we had a big port, we had a port authority, and there's a lot of challenges always come with that. And the environmental officers have got regular, work there, inspecting some of the materials that's coming in, etc. So that's still going to remain the challenge, because a lot of our officers, as we all know, have been really redeployed, dealing with infections and COVID, and working in different areas that got COVID infections. So it's a challenge, and we'll meet the challenge. But as I say, still a lot of ambiguity and clarification needed on it.
Absolutely, Councillor Truman, and you make such an important point there. With the level of uncertainty that we have, it's important that as we move forward in considering what we do with the underspend, that we do make provision for any uncertainties that we may face in future. Absolutely. Councillor Cochrane.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I think you mentioned about COVID, and I just like to raise the issue, certainly with children's services. Certainly with all the lockdown, I think the referrals that are coming into safeguarding has gone up by nearly 30 to 40%, and that's a hell of a sort of an impact on the services. And it worries me really clearly from the mental health side of things and what's coming there. So when we're looking at the impact of the revenue budget, clearly that's something I think we anticipated it, but when it comes to reality, when it happens, it's a biggie. And I just needed to mention that it is, and we're in another lockdown as well now. I think the fallout of that is going to be with children, certainly in some areas where people haven't even got a garden to walk into with their children. It's a real issue, and I'm really concerned about the children's side of things that's coming in through safeguarding and the referrals that are coming through to us.
Thank you, Councillor Cochrane, and you do highlight there, I think, the importance of the services that we provide, you know, particularly in relation to safeguarding. You're absolutely right in that. So, are there any further comments on that particular item? Okay. So, colleagues, then we're being asked to note the overall forecast position and certainly the recommendation that heads of service continue to focus on the agreed savings and achieving those, to note the planning assumptions, the forecast movements in reserves, certainly to note the significant financial challenges that schools face, and we've discussed that, and note that work is in progress to identify the impact of unspent budgets and determine what needs to be carried forward to next year. So are you content to do so, colleagues? Yeah. That's great. Thank you very much for that and for your support with that. We move on then to item number 6 on our agenda today, which is the Capital Programme Monitoring Report for November 2020. And colleagues, you can find this on pages 157 to 176 of your packs. Now, as a council, we've got an extensive capital programme, as you'll be aware, investing across the authority in areas such as schools, heritage assets, energy efficiency schemes, invest to save programmes, and investing in the regeneration of our city centre. This report builds on the investment already approved in relation to capital, with a request to add an additional £3.915 million to the programme to further enable the delivery of our corporate plan priorities, the majority of which relates to the acceleration of the Cardiff Capital Region City deal. It also provides the latest forecast on expenditure, which this year's schemes and slippage of budget to spend into future years, which this has identified. Turning first to the programme itself. Cabinet, we're being asked to approve an additional £3.9 million to the overall programme, mainly for the accelerated spending by the Cardiff City Deal region. As a member of the City Deal, we're required to both provide capital funds to it, as well as any cash flow funding, if they spend in advance of receipt of the Treasury funding that they've been committed. The latest business plan was reviewed and approved by their Cabinet recently, and approved the acceleration of spend. Whilst overall spending will remain within the agreed initial overall funding envelope, so to be clear, this is not a request for any additional funding, it is to make provision to accelerate the agreed funding, bring that forward. So the revenue impact of this for us as a City Council is, as this is funded by our own borrowing, will cover many years and will need to be factored into our budget. And this is something that we've already been through, we've already agreed as a City Council. I really feel the need to emphasise this, that You will recall, as a City Council, we agreed to commit to the Cardiff Capital Region. Clearly, it's an ambitious acceleration of spending and will need to be carefully monitored, and I'm really pleased with the scrutiny arrangements that are in place for the Cardiff Capital Region. So the table showing the capital programme reflects the addition, and the resulting budget this year is just under 32 million, with an overall programme of nearly 211 million. In terms of monitoring the spend, the report confirms a relatively low spending of just over 11 million on a budget of just under 32 million, and this pattern isn't uncommon, but clearly the challenging context for progressing schemes and resulting unavoidable slippage this year is well understood in the context of COVID. So we've got the report. Members have had an opportunity to look at the report, and I've explained the situation in relation to the Cardiff Capital Region. At this point, before we go any further with this item, I'll just invite comments from Cabinet members. So would anybody like to comment on this report? Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, just in regard to the schools, as I mentioned earlier, which ties in with the comments that we made about the investments we're proposing with that. And of course, you know, if you look at the 21st Century Schools Band B, which all sounds very technical, but it's the money that we apply for from Welsh Government, which is match funded. And previous bills, you know, that are completing now with Band A, and we have applied for Band B, which is a matter of 70 million with the match funding. Clearly, it depends on how much money we've got available as how much can be match funded. And given our limited pot, you know, it's not nearly as much as we would like or really need. But nonetheless, it's another example of how we're developing things in Newport and our commitment to doing that as best we can. So you look at the list there, you've got page 162, you know, we've got Ysgolgyfyn Gwent Yscoed, Baselig High, Caerleon Comprehensive. We've got the new development on the Whitehead site that we mentioned earlier on, and that's for the new Welsh Medium Primary, and additional resources for Tregear Park Primary. There are projects at Maindy and Maes Glass Primary, and works for reducing infant class sizes, which tied in again, like I said, with the comments earlier on about Maes Glass and St Woolas Primary Schools. And also we're supporting Charles Williams Church in Wales Primary with the renovations there. So again, a good representation of our commitment. And we are doing everything that we possibly can to assist schools at all time. It's always been a priority and always will be. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Giles. And I have to say, it's so positive to listen to you outline that level of capital investment in schools and the fantastic facilities that we are developing there for the future of our young people. So thank you very much for that. Are there any additional comments on this report, colleagues? No? Well, the proposal is that we, firstly, that we approve the additions and the amendments to the capital programme, and this is in Appendix A. So are members content to approve those? Yeah, thank you. We're also asked to approve the slippage of 4, 5, 6, 8 into future years. Yeah.
Yes.
To note the update on the remaining capital resources up to and including 2022-23. Yeah. To note the capital expenditure forecast position.
Yes.
And to note the balance of and approve the allocation of in-year capital receipts. Yeah. Is everyone content with that? Thank you very much for that, and thank you for your contributions there. The next item on our agenda today is item number 7, the mid-year performance analysis for 2020-21, and this is on pages 177 to 222 of the pack. So a substantial report there for you, colleagues. And this is the mid-year performance analysis for the first 6 months of this year. So our service areas provide an update on the progress against the delivery of their service plan objectives and performance measures, and this also contributes towards the Council's strategic recovery aims and corporate plan. The report that we've got before us, colleagues, also includes feedback and recommendations from the People Scrutiny Committee and the Place and Corporate Scrutiny Committee following the presentation of the mid-year reviews in November 2020. So the report before us includes those scrutiny comments and recommendations. Just to give you some background and context to the report itself, colleagues, back in 2017, as you'll be aware, we launched our 5-year corporate plan, and the plan sets out our vision and goals for improving people's lives in Newport and improving the delivery of our services. Our 8 service areas developed service plans which outlined how they would contribute towards achieving the Council's objectives and improve the delivery of their services. Now, as with any plan, there are challenges and external factors that can impact on the achievement of our goals. And as we've already stated here today in this meeting, this year has been unlike any other year that we've faced as a council and across our communities. And this has disrupted the delivery of services while we've refocused our efforts to support the vulnerable and marginalised communities and households. So we fully accept during this year we have refocused our efforts on maintaining essential service delivery, as we've discussed previously in our meeting today. And this has also demonstrated the strengths of the Council as we've had to respond quickly to these challenges and implement new and innovative ways to delivering our services. And indeed, this was the discussion of all the local authority leaders in Wales today at our Welsh Local Government Association meeting, was how quickly we'd been able to adapt and respond in terms of service delivery. Now, to support this, our Cabinet here in Newport, you will recall, approved Newport City Council's 4 strategic recovery aims, and this support our wellbeing objectives, but also reflect the opportunities and challenges that have presented. So quite rightly, we've reflected on the impact of the pandemic, the ongoing issues, and we have in our recovery plan, we've ensured that our aims reflect this. So the Cabinet report that we have before us demonstrates that the Council is making good progress against its 4 strategic recovery aims, and the majority of those actions report a green overall status. Across our 8 service areas and their service plans, 64% of the actions will report in a green status and were on target for completion against their target dates, which is absolutely incredible given that this has been during our response to the pandemic. I mean, I have to say, totally hats off to all of our officers, particularly our heads of service, who've been trying to deliver on this at the same time as responding to the crisis. So thank you all, many thanks to the heads of service for this. Now, 22% of those of the actions reported an amber status. So, and these really highlight potential issues that could impact on the delivery of those. And only 1% of these reported a red status that were at risk of not being completed by their target date. Only 1% in the year that we've had. It's just, well, it's a true reflection of the commitment across the authority to public service, I have to say. So the report also highlights some of the achievements and notable developments in the delivery of the corporate plan and our strategic recovery aims. And I think at this point, colleagues, what I'll do is I'll pause, because I'm sure that as portfolio holders, you may wish to come in and comment on the performance in relation to some of your service areas. So, Councillor Harvey, would you like to come in there?
Thank you, Leader. I just am astounded with this year being the worst year in any of our living memories, and yet we're only 1% fall down. Come on, that you just, why isn't that highlighted across the media? Instead of moaning and whining and, oh, 5% council tax, what about the good things that we have done? 64% are in green, and given that they are also dealing with this virus and they're running around like headless chickens, I cannot speak highly enough of the heads of service and the officers and the public in general for just abiding by what they're asked to do. And this report proves it conclusively for me. I couldn't believe I was reading this year's. I thought, no, there's got to be a previous year before COVID. No, this is during COVID, and I think it's very, very commendable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey, and I share your views. Councillor Truman.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. On a similar vein to Councillor Harvey, you know, it is a big thank you to all officers, particularly in my particular portfolio, because, as you know, we were asked at quite short notice to set up a test, trace and protect project, as other councils were as well. So we started from scratch, and at that particular time, a lot of officers were working from home, but many of them volunteered to do it, other than, you know, until they could get back on their normal job, and they've helped fill that void at the time of staff. But we have filled a lot of vacancies in the test track section now, and they're working very hard, as you say, covering 7 days a week, and so they're very big challenges for them to do that. But whilst they've been doing that, they've also got to do their other work as well, particularly the environmental health officers. They've got to do inspections, you know, on infections and things like that, and they've also got to do their port work authorities, all these things. So what I'm saying is, whilst it's a fantastic effort for all of them, what they've done here now, there will be some blips next year in the performance levels, I think, of all the portfolios, because it's not only my portfolio is being pulled in to a lot of this work, it's all the other portfolios as well. So it's had a knock-on effect, but everyone is stepping up to the plate, and as you said, to achieve some of these service plans objectives, I think is fantastic. And again, a lot of them didn't have to do that. They volunteered, they stepped out of their normal job to do this, so we could set it up and running. But it's running very well. It's under a lot of pressure. You know, we all know that with these sort of COVID, you know, positive cases coming up. But they're doing it, and we've got a lot to thank them for. And again, as I say, a massive thank you for all those who are stepping up to the plate and making sure Newport can be as safe as it can.
Absolutely, thank you, Councillor Truman, and you really emphasised there. You know, I talked about how responsive we were and how agile and how we've been able to move to respond, and the example of that, you know, in your particular portfolio area, setting up the TTP service, I mean, that's absolutely incredible, and all just completely focused on protecting the public, protecting our citizens. It's a tremendous achievement, isn't it? But as you rightly highlight, it will put pressures on performance in other areas of service. So thank you for that. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Leader. I wanted to highlight as well, as we're looking at achievements within this local authority in relation to performance and how hard our officers have worked. And I think it needs to be highlighted that in just before Christmas, our local authority was awarded 2 national awards for our innovative solar panel operation. We actually have put, I've got the details here, 129 solar on our public buildings, which will generate and will actually save 348 tonnes of, let me get this right, it will actually reduce the council's carbon emissions by 348 tonnes per year and generate 1,973,000 units of clean renewable electricity per year. And this is to help us to obtain and reach our objective of being carbon neutral by 2030. It's a commendable achievement by our officers who've worked incredibly hard to make sure this has actually happened. And it's 2 national awards, 1 a Welsh award and 1 being a UK award. It's absolutely phenomenal. Thank you, Lita. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis, and I share your comments there. I'm fully supportive of them. It's an outstanding achievement, isn't it? And in this particular environment, in this context, and really is evidence of our commitment as a local authority to sustainable development in everything that we do as we move forward. It really is a priority for us. So, and thank you for helping to take that forward for us. Thank you very much for that. Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Leader. Well, I think we're all aware of the huge demands on education that have been taking place over the last year. I mean, where do you start? So I've got a nice long list, but really it's just a dip into what everyone has achieved this year, whilst really maintaining impressive standards as well. So if you look at the demands of the education staff in the City Council that support the schools and what's going on in the schools and the governors, you had blended learning. Look how that's developed over a year, a very short period of time, really. And that demand on schools is, of course, they've got to develop the learning virtually. They've got to put the courses together. They've got to put the classes together, whilst they've also had children in school. And of course, we've protected the most vulnerable. They've continued to attend as much as possible, even if the others can't. And of course, the primary schools as well have been able to attend more than the secondaries, and we know the strains on the secondary schools and those pupils, and the uncertainty around exams and the rest of it. Look at the IT that has to be provided, you know, the laptops, the dongles, and actually ensuring safe use, you know, when they're going on the internet. All that huge amount of work. Staffing issues, you know, got staff who have been ill, or they got family that have been ill and they've had to isolate, and you still had to cover and do what you possibly can. Health and safety of buildings. How do we fit in with this distancing, classes, having the children outside, outdoor classrooms, all these sort of things. We've got the changes of exams and assessments, changing the whole system to not only fit within the schools, but what about these youngsters that want to go to university? What are we doing about apprenticeships? How, you know, we're going to provide the training, and how do we look after the most vulnerable? You know, we've had fantastic success with that. How do you keep track of them and in touch when they're not actually in the building? There's constant changes. So it's attendance. As I said, changes in teaching practice, you have to do that on the ground, and then there's the additional meetings. So you got more meetings with Welsh Government, more meetings with the ministers, you got more council meetings and governors meetings, and all of these things where people have had to adapt to virtual. And I have to say the IT and the teams has worked very well, really. I mean, in my experience, I'm sure there's been some hitches, but when you think of the short period of time, and then it's protecting the whole families. I mean, Paul, you know, with your portfolio, you'll be aware of this as well, because we all work together and work with the police and so forth. But, you know, parents are under tremendous strain. How do they have the children at home? How do they work? How do they help them with their schoolwork? It's not an easy thing. I'd imagine pretty difficult with teenagers particularly. But if you've got children with, you know, autistic spectrum or these other attention deficit and these sort of issues, as well as, of course, managing on less income, issues around food, clothing, the basics and heating. So it's been, and that really is dipping your toe into what's been undertaken over the last year. So, you know, I am so impressed, as with all officers in, you know, I speak for education as my portfolio, but I'm so impressed with what has been achieved and the commitment by this authority, you know, to doing the best we possibly can. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Giles, and absolutely share the views that you've expressed there. Deputy Leader.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Just a few points from me. Obviously, the scrutiny that took place on the 9th regarding the comments from members on the collection of waste and recycling and I thank them for making those kind comments. And yes, 64% of targets, yes, green. Will there be pressures on performances next year, as Councillor Truman says? Yes, there probably will. But we look at it as priority, don't we? What's worst first has to be addressed. But we also have to remember that, you know, the schools, social services, city services staff, we are not exempt from COVID. We can catch it. And those people are out there on the front line. If you look at people who mix with hundreds and hundreds of people per day, you know, bin men, head teachers, etc., social services, carers. But my biggest point is the willingness of staff from the top down, from the bottom up. The willingness of staff to move and do what is required of them is in testament to them. And I really do take my hat off to them. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Deputy Leader. Complete agreement with what you say there. Councillor Cochrane.
Yeah, thank you, Rita. I'd like to just support what I think Debbie Harvey summed it all up right in the beginning. We should be singing this from the rooftops, really, about hitting the targets. Yes, there are one or two that but we know them, and we're working towards it. But generally, there's no doubt about it. There's more green than any other colour, and that says it all. There's just 2 points I'd just like to make. Then I think it's the youth offending team. The youth offending team, I don't know whether you realise, we haven't had one child in custody now for the last 18 months. Now, that's quite unbelievable, to be perfect, and that's all the work that the youth offending team are doing. The other thing is on the recent foster carers initiative that we've adapted, we've had an extra 6 foster carers. And there's quite a big push now, and a lot of people now have made applications to be foster carers as well, and that will be excellent towards decreasing the independent sector that really is costing us an absolute fortune. So we've got more foster carers coming to Newport now, and they all want to do it, so that's great. And I'd just like to mention those 2 points.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cochrane. And I think I'd really like to thank those people who are coming forward, very, you know, and committing themselves to looking after some of those vulnerable children, taking them into their homes and taking care of them. I'd really like to thank all of our foster carers for the work that they do with that. And I think that is absolutely outstanding in terms of our youth offending service there, isn't it? That what work the team has done there, 18 months with no children in custody. That is incredible work. That's outstanding. So thank you for that, and thank you for highlighting that for us. Councillor Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I'd like to point you to page 211, the bottom. Of our unfortunately disappointment that we couldn't develop phase 2 of the neighbourhood hub project. I'm going to use that disappointment to point out that obviously we couldn't do it because the neighbourhood hubs across the city, newly restructured, were right at the very heart of our response to the emergency, and that's why it couldn't develop the way that it should have and will do in future. But what it did prove was a testing ground for it, because this is a major aspiration for us, is to bring services closer to the public, for people to be able to get whatever service they require, not just from us, from the health, from the police, from the social services, wherever, in their communities. And we've got a long way to go. We've only developed one of the 4, and the others will have to be developed when we can get round to doing it and when COVID is finished. But what an amazing job that they have proved to be doing, because they've been tested to the full. There's no way that they could have been tested to the extent that they have during this last 8 months. And to me, that is just, I use this, a lot of people don't know this, you know, it's an ill wind that blows no good. It's the COVID has been a test of our commitment and our ideology in terms of the hubs, and they've come up trumps. Not trumps like in America, unfortunately, but so I'd just like to say I look forward to that being in development in future papers. Thank you, Leader.
Absolutely, Councillor Mayor, and really good to hear you there emphasise the role that the hubs have played, certainly at the community level in terms of our response to the pandemic. I would like, and forgive me this indulgence as the Chair of the Cabinet, I'd like to actually take this opportunity to give my thanks to the teams in Law and Regulation, People and Business Change and our SRS service for actually enabling us to function as elected members. So I'd really like to thank them for the work that they've done in order to enable us to re-establish our governance processes and use technology to support that. So they've enabled us to come back together as a cabinet, to meet as a cabinet, for our council to meet, and importantly for our committees to meet, including our scrutiny committees, and provide scrutiny and oversight of our services and community issues. So a huge thanks to all of the officers involved in that, because if it wasn't for their actions and the work that they've done, we wouldn't be able to have this meeting here today in this format. So so whilst that's not something that is something we may think about immediately in terms of frontline service provision, is certainly an important aspect of service provision when it comes to the governance of the authority. So thank you everybody for that. Okay then, so members, just considering this then and thinking about your comments, colleagues, and the information that we've received in the report, I'd just like to pause there and highlight the fact that we welcome the constructive scrutiny and feedback from our colleagues as well, our peers on the scrutiny committees. We're really pleased with the time that they've taken to consider the performance of the service areas and feedback to us, and we welcome that. And as you know, their feedback is included in the report, but the videos of the meetings where the comments were made can also be found in public as well. So I'd like to thank our colleagues, our scrutiny committee chair colleagues and colleagues who are members of the scrutiny committees, for the understanding that they've shown in relation to the challenges that officers have experienced this year. And I'd also like to thank our scrutiny colleagues for the support that they've shown to officers as well. Now, speaking as the leader of the cabinet, we do accept that feedback, we welcome that feedback, and I would encourage all of our cabinet members and senior officers to consider these comments in terms of the delivery of our services and in future. So thank you all to colleagues for that. So overall, I think we can say, colleagues, that our services are progressing well against their objectives in spite of the challenges that we've experienced this year. But it also demonstrates, I think the report also demonstrates, that there is still work to do in terms of supporting council services and our communities as we go forward, certainly in terms of rebuilding into the future. As we've highlighted throughout this year, really, inequality in society remains a significant challenge for us all, and as a council, working together with partners, residents and businesses, there is an opportunity to make a difference for everyone in our city, and we will continue to make this our mission going forward in terms of addressing that. As cabinet members, I would like to highlight as well, I think, the importance of the responsibility that we have in relation to these service areas, and also the responsibility to address any underperformance as well. So this is clearly something we need to continue with as we go forward. So having discussed that item in some detail there, and we've had some really good examples, are members content there to note the comments of the report? Yeah. and happy to take a further update once the end of year position is available.
Yep.
And also, certainly as portfolio holders, I think it's important that we take any action that's necessary, along with directors and heads of service, to address any areas of poor performance that the report highlights.
Absolutely.
So, if everyone's content to agree that, yeah, we'll move on there now to item number 8 on our agenda, which is our old friend, the Local Government Elections Bill. And this is the Performance and Governance Consultation response. This is to be found on pages 223 to 230 of the packs that we have today. So you recall at our last meeting, colleagues, that we were presented with an overview of the new bill, and we considered our Newport City Council response to the establishment of corporate joint committees. The local government bill will receive royal assent this year, and we'll need, as local authorities, to implement some of the changes, which range from electoral reform, establishment of CJCs, and as is outlined in this particular report that's before us today, performance and governance reform. So what we're asked to do is approve consider the contents of the report and agree that the consultation response can be submitted by the closing date of the 3rd of February. So what is this particular response in relation to? Well, the bill itself, as you know, will replace the Local Government Measure 2009, and under the proposals, councils will be required to conduct an annual self-assessment of performance, a complete periodic review to provide an external expert perspective on performance. The bill also gives the Auditor General Wales the responsibility to carry out special inspections, and gives Welsh Government ministers powers to intervene where councils face significant problems. Over the past 5 years, Newport City Council has been making continuous improvements in the monitoring, reporting and scrutiny of performance against our corporate plan. We're also well placed in terms of producing annual reviews into the delivery of our wellbeing plan, our strategic equalities plan, our Welsh language and our annual governance review. The bill also places additional responsibilities on the Council's Audit Committee and Performance Scrutiny Committees to monitor and provide an overview of performance. The bill will require councils to engage in and involve its key stakeholders more in its annual self-assessment report and those periodic reviews that I've mentioned. The Welsh Government issued its consultation paper asking councils to submit views on the draft statutory guidance that will be issued to enable councils to effectively implement the new requirements for 2022. And attached to the Cabinet report is our draft response as a council. As the proposed response outlines, overall the document has set out clearly the new requirements for councils to implement as part of the bill. The guidance provides a clear overview of the expected roles and responsibilities and considers how these assurance activities, governance arrangements can complement the overall process, subject to, of course, the final guidance. We welcome the opportunity to comment, and it's helpful that the guidance allows flexibility for councils to set out how to implement the new requirements in line with our own governance arrangements. So at that point, I think, colleagues, I'll just pause for a moment and invite colleagues, Cabinet colleagues, to comment on the paper or the bill. If you've got any comments on either, would anybody like to comment? No, thank you. Well, this local government bill is, as you know, is a comprehensive bill and will lead to major reform of local government across Wales, and it certainly supports collaborative working on a regional basis and actually enhances the democratic process. So if there are no further comments on this, I'll ask you then, colleagues, if you're happy to agree the consultation response for submission to the Welsh Government. Are members content to do so? Okay, thank you very much for that. We move on then to item number 9 on our agenda today, which is the COVID-19 response and recovery update. And colleagues, you can find this in pages 231 to 250 of your report packs today. So just to really provide some context, as we've previously mentioned in our meeting today, we have agreed previously as a Cabinet to 4 strategic recovery aims, and we've also agreed to receive an update at every Cabinet meeting on the Newport City Council response and recovery. So in terms of our meeting today, you'll recall our last report was presented to our December Cabinet. However, since then, we have seen Wales go into alert level 4 restrictions due to the new strain of COVID-19 spreading across communities. We're also, as colleagues will be aware, further restrictions are being considered by Welsh Government in relation to this, as the First Minister announced today, and the Cabinet Member for Education has also referred to that in our discussions previously today. But there is also hope, and that comes in the form of the mass vaccination programme, which is starting this month. So we welcome that. I'm sure colleagues will all agree the festive period was very different and very difficult for us all this year, with the new alert level restrictions coming into place from Sunday morning on the 20th of December, following the confirmation that the new strain could be attributed towards the rise in the number of positive cases. And once again, this meant that non-essential businesses, gyms, leisure centres and hospitality had to close, and households had to stay at home and not continue with their proposed extended household bubble. And I really do understand how difficult that was for families, having many families, my own included, having self-isolated in the period leading up to that in order to enable us to have that, then to experience that opportunity removed because of the severity of the situation. And I really do understand the impact that that's had on families. Now, in the past few months, the NHS across Gwent has been dealing with enormous pressure, and there's been a significant increase with hospital admissions, as we're all aware. And sadly, many people have seen their loved ones. Many people have seen their loved ones pass due to COVID, and I really do sincerely mean that my thoughts are with all of our residents who are experiencing that at the moment. As a council, with our partners, we have been and we will continue to support our health partners through this crisis, and we continue to support the Welsh Government's message of staying at home and only to go out to exercise, to buy necessary food and to work if required. So if people cannot work at home. I can't emphasise strongly enough, colleagues, and I know you will share this view, how important it is at this time that all of our residents and businesses continue to comply with these restrictions. We really must continue with this now to get through this. But there is hope in terms of the rollout of the vaccines, as I've previously mentioned. But as I said in my column in the South Wales Argus earlier this week, there is the rollout of the vaccine. It is there is hope, but we need to be patient with this. All of us need to be patient with this because it will take time to roll this out. And in terms of this and the rollout of the vaccine, we are supporting the Health Board with this. And it's really important, as previously mentioned, that as citizens we do everything that we can, and the priority there in terms of our contribution to this as citizens is to follow those rules, you know, those basic rules that were implemented at the outset, you know, simple things in terms of hygiene, hand washing, maintaining social distancing. We can all continue to follow those rules and follow those the guidance set out by Welsh Government. Newport City Council, as you'll all be aware, has gone above and beyond, and we've heard many examples of that today. Our officers have gone above and beyond what is required of them in order to continue to serve our communities and care for the most vulnerable as we go through this. That's not over, and we do need to continue with that. And I think at this time, at this point in time, we face a number of challenges that are particularly intense, but we will continue to do this, and we'll continue to work together on this. So at this point, colleagues, I am going to pause and invite comments from you all. Councillor Truman, would you like to come in there?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. It was certainly a Christmas like no other, that's for sure. And we never see one again like that. But as you said, there is a light at the end of the under the tunnel, and with the Moderna vaccine being given approval today, that's 3 we got now in the UK, so that's going to help. But it's going to take some considerable time to get it around to everybody. Obviously, the first people, in my view, have got to have it the frontline workers and the elderly, vulnerable. They're the people that should be having it first, because after all, the NHS have got to deliver it. So, you know, they need to be fit enough to do that, and we've got to stop our hospitals now being overwhelmed, because we've seen a significant increase, and we're still seeing it as we speak now. But this is year, whether we like it or not. But I think we will get through it. There's no doubt about that. But all those who have denied COVID, the so-called fake people who have said, oh, it's a hoax, like a certain person who leads, well, not for long, a certain country in America. This is here. This is real. Just walk around an hospital. I haven't been around an hospital to see any of these poor people now struggling to breathe. And, you know, so it's here, it's real. People have lost loved ones, and they still losing loved ones. So this is not an hoax, it's real. We all now got to pull together, and we have pulled together, all of us, and we will get through it. We will get through it. As I say, the signs are there now. As you say, the more vaccines coming out, we've got to get out to the frontline workers and the most vulnerable, and we'll do that, I'm sure. But it must be like a D-Day planning operation to get all these vaccines out, having people fit enough to do that. So we're all going to work together, pull together, we'll get through it. So let's do it. We will get through it. And as I say, there is a light under the tunnel, and let's all pull together. Let's get through it. Bit of patience, as you say, Leader, he needs that, and it'll come to all those people eventually. They'll all have it if they want it, and obviously I hope they all want it. But as I say, we're not out of the tunnel yet, but there's a big light there to drive us through.
Thank you, Councillor Truman. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Leader. Reiterate what Ray has just said. I have a plea, and I have a plea to all of you who think this is not real. Please understand it is. There are 9 of us in this cabinet. It's affected directly all of us. 2 of my own children have had it. Other members of this cabinet have tested positive, and members of our group are testing positive, as are members of the opposition. There is nothing fake about this. There is nothing to dismiss it at all in any way. It's very serious, and sadly, thousands of people have died. I'm just confused as to how many more deaths do people need to have before they'll understand the impact of this awful disease. I'm glad there's an injection coming. I'm glad we got 3, and the quicker it's given out, the better. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey, and thank you for that very sober reminder there, very sobering indeed, that it does indeed affect us all. Councillor Rahman.
Thank you, Leader. I just want to echo what Councillor Harvey just said. Unfortunately, I've found out recently, in the past few weeks alone, that a few of my friends have tested positive, and they're all aged under 30. They're all aged in the mid to late 20s. And, you know, they were all fine beforehand, but this has caught them out of the blue. It only takes one person in a household to get infected to affect everyone else in that family. So I would urge everyone in a family household to be cautious. Unfortunately, I won't name any names for obviously privacy reasons, but one of my friends, he was speaking to me the other day saying how careful he's been, how careful his family have been, but it only took one person in their family not to take notice, and it spread across. It made him test positive, and went on to affect his family. So what I would urge everyone is speak with your household, make sure you're all in line and working together to prevent being affected. It seems a lot more worse this time round than it did in March. It really does, because I'm noticing a lot more people, young people, getting affected now. I know in the early stages we were talking about how older people were affected and the young people weren't taking it seriously. Well, now it's the time for them to take it seriously, because it really is affecting young people. And I hate it. I really do hate it when I go out shopping, when I go to Asda or, you know, wherever, I see young people just congregating together, not taking it seriously. The parents need to take it seriously. If the young ones don't take it seriously, it means there's something going on in their household that someone is not taking it responsibly, and an adult is not taking it responsibly. So please, everyone, have words with your loved ones, have word with your families, and do take it seriously. The vaccine is coming, but it's coming very slowly. You know, I can't imagine I'm going to get it anytime soon. I don't think I'm vulnerable, but, you know, I'm still taking it seriously because I don't want to go through what I'm hearing others are going through. I really don't. It sounds really nice. I'm hearing strong young people who go to the gym and stuff getting it and then struggling to walk up and down stairs. They're a lot fitter than me. I just don't want to go through that, and I can't imagine anyone who would want to go through that either. So please heed our advice. It doesn't come from any malice. We're not just saying this to control people. You know, all these tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists out there, I just don't know where they're getting this from. I really don't know. You know, if it's, I'm trying to not get angry by this, because I honestly don't know what purpose it serves them from spreading falsehood like this. I really don't. But yes, just everyone out there, stay safe and stay at home, please.
Thank you, Councillor Rahman. Thank you very much for your comments there. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to support every comment that my colleagues are making, and indeed support what you've said so far, Jane, because this is an excellent report in that it highlights how hard our officers are working to ensure that the city continues to function. It's trying to make normality out of a very, very difficult situation. If you read the report, it's about the day-to-day management of the waste collection, about developing on our economic plans. All those things are contained with this plan. It's well written, it's easy to read, but there's a couple of points that are really worth highlighting. In that over Christmas, with the return to the lockdown, has been the focus by our officers to ensure that our homeless residents are afforded accommodation in which to live in. That's an ongoing issue. Situation, but there's funding there to support those residents, and our officers are working actively with their partners within the Newport City area to ensure that those residents are supported. Equally, food banks, there's been a huge emphasis this Christmas on support for food banks, additional funding, but ensuring there's been a coordinated approach so that our food banks work together. There's been a coordinated approach with our volunteers to ensure that as many residents as possible who are in need were afforded and supported with a Christmas dinner this year. There's equal support and focus in this report on our carers who go unrecognised. They are the hidden part of our community, and those numbers have increased as COVID has increased, and there's a big focus on those individuals within this report as well. And it's worth highlighting that they are the people that need to be thanked for what they do. They work incredibly hard. It's remorseless what they do, day in, day out, protecting their loved and cared ones who are already being shielded. But it's really worth, as I said, it's worth looking at the report. It's all within there and well written and well presented. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Davis, and you know, thank you for really highlighting some of the excellent work that's going on there. And I think what that does is really reflects the efforts that are being made on a whole, but by everybody. I mean, it makes me really proud of Newport to hear you say that and talk about some of those examples. We talk about the role of carers, you know, the caring for their families, their loved ones, their friends, the role of the volunteers. Where would we be without the volunteers that have supported this effort? You know, the role of the, and I can't believe I'm saying this in 2021 in a civilized society, you know, the food banks, you know, the important role that our colleagues in the food banks, again, supported by volunteers. And I think it's really important, certainly at this point, that I thank all of the people who donate to the food banks, who make it possible for those people to be supported. And I know our hubs have played a key role in getting those parcels out to individuals and households that are affected. And I'd really also like to thank our colleagues in Unite for the generous donation that they've made over the Christmas period, which has continued to help address some of those issues as well. In our discussions today, obviously, we've reflected on and considered our response and our progress against our recovery aims. And I think the situation now, compared to the situation we were in initially in March, is that at this point in time, we're managing to maintain progress with our services, progress against our service plans, and also the response to the pandemic, which all the evidence indicates is far more severe this time. We've got, you know, the number of deaths, the number of hospital admissions, you know, the highly contagious nature of the virus. It really is a difficult and challenging time, and yet these streams of work do continue. But I think it's really important for us as the Cabinet to also, you know, make very clear here for the public and for our citizens that when we're talking about services and we're talking about service delivery, it's important that we recognise that services are delivered by people. Each and every service that we provide has got people enabling that to happen. And we're all human, as Councillor Harvey highlighted. Many of us have been affected, our families, our friends, by the virus itself. Many people have been affected by that. The people, our officers, you know, our volunteers, our officers, all of those people are at risk of catching the virus as well. Many people will have come into contact and then have to isolate. Some people, unfortunately, will go on then to develop the virus. In terms of service provision, we are reaching a point where we need to be mindful that there might be some short-term disruption to service provision if this continues to impact on the people that deliver those services. And we will do what we've done throughout this crisis, in that we will focus on the provision of those essential services and maintaining that service delivery. But really, and this is my plea to the citizens of Newport, you have to bear with us on this, because whilst we're doing everything we can to ensure that services continue to be provided, what underpins this is a people, and the people that provide the services. And they're not immune to this any less than any one of us may be. And so we all have to be mindful of that going forward, and we'll continue to monitor that as we have our monthly updates as well. And it wouldn't be appropriate, I'm sure, as you know, to close this item without saying a huge thanks to everybody who's helped us to get to this point and helped ensure that we are able to provide that support to our partners, support to our citizens, and continue with that. And we'll have a further update on this next month. But in terms of this item and bringing this item to a close, are members content to note the report?
Yes, thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Thanks. We move then to item number 10 on our agenda today, which is the Brexit update report. It's on pages 251 to 258 of the packs. And I think it's really important to emphasise that this is our cabinet report. It's our update on the Brexit trade negotiations and preparations for our exit from the European Union. However, this still continues to move on. It's very much a work in progress, and it's important to understand as we consider this report that it is a snapshot of a point in time, and things do continue to move on in relation to this. So as you'll be aware, colleagues, on the 24th of December, the UK government and the EU announced that they'd agreed a future trade relationship that would mean businesses will be able to trade tariff-free from the 1st of January. For many of our businesses, this provides a great deal of certainty because there was quite a high degree of uncertainty around this. Businesses will still have to comply with the new custom rules, and there may be disruption to the supply of certain goods and services in the short term, and I think we're all aware of that. What I would do as the leader of the City Council is actually encourage all businesses in Newport to visit the Business Wales website and ensure that they understand and comply with these new regulations. Notwithstanding, there does remain many areas that are yet to be resolved within this, such as the Shared Prosperity Fund and also the new agricultural support. Now, here in Newport, we're a city with a long heritage of forging strong business and trade relationships with the world and enabling people from around the world to live and work in our city. And we're very proud of our city and the contribution that people of many cultures and backgrounds make to our city as a whole. So I think within this context, it's really important that we continue to promote Newport and provide opportunities for small to medium-sized businesses to grow and develop as we recover from the COVID pandemic, and we will continue to do that. And from the 1st of January, as you'll be aware, there are also new rules that have come into place in terms of freedom of movement and the introduction of a new points-based immigration system. So probably best I don't make any comments on that, except to say that here in Newport, we will always be an inclusive city, and it's important for all of our residents to know that everyone is welcome to live and work here, supporting the sustainable growth of our city and our region. I'm going to repeat that. We are an inclusive city, and everyone, UK and non-UK citizens, are welcome to live and work here and support our growth. As a city, we've already seen a large number of people receive confirmation of their settled status, but we are aware that many more need to apply before the 30th of June deadline. As a City Council, in working together with our multi-agency partners, we've been supporting and encouraging EU residents to apply, and we will continue to do this up to and after the deadline. So can I please, again, as the leader of the City Council, make a plea to people who are living and working in Newport. If you haven't yet applied, please come forward. We can help you with this. We can work with our partners to help you. And as I said previously, you are most welcome to live and work here. In terms of progress, and the Deputy Leader and I had quite a detailed update on progress in relation to Brexit and also the risks that this poses. And I'm really pleased to say that there has been a lot of work undertaken across the public sector and at different levels of government in terms of mitigating any potential risks that that Brexit does present us with. We have our own task and finish group within the council, and at the Gwent level, the Local Resilience Forum has also been working on this as well. In terms of what happens with this, so how will we manage this? Any risks that you know, need to be escalated will be dealt with by our gold. They'll be reported into our gold response here. As a council, we've been contacting all key suppliers and providers of services, and we've been assured that supplies will be available as much as possible in terms of risks around the supply chain. The communications team have been working really hard to get messages out there and to signpost people to the Business Wales and Welsh Government support. Our community cohesion team have been working closely, and yet again, it pains me to say this in the 21st century, with our food banks working group and our EU-SS working group to support EU citizens, residents and asylum seekers, and to encourage ongoing take-up of EU settled status. Our food banks have worked tirelessly throughout 2020 to support low-income and vulnerable households. And again, really huge thanks to Unite the Union for their significant contribution, financial contribution to this. We've also been working very closely with Gwent Police and other multi-agency groups to identify any issues of hate, crime and discrimination directed at EU citizens living and working in the city. Now, the table in Appendix 1 of the report provides full details of the work that's been undertaken there. And I don't know if at this point Cabinet members have got any comments they'd like to make on the report. Okay. So in that case, colleagues, I'd just like to ask you if you're content to agree to accept the contents of the report and to continue to receive those regular updates as progress is made during the transition period. Yeah? Okay, thank you very much for that. Item number 11 on our agenda today is the PSB summary document, and the purpose of this is to provide an overview of the work of the PSB, and it's attached to our report for information. Are colleagues happy to receive this? Yeah. Item number 12 then is the Cabinet Work Programme. You can see this on pages 259 to 266. Of our packs. You can see this is our monthly report on the work programme, and you can see the items that we have in our future agendas. Can I ask somebody to move acceptance of the updated work programme? Yeah.
So moved.
Thank you very much. And that draws our Cabinet meeting to a close there. So thank you, colleagues, very much for your attendance today, for the work that you've done on this, and for your contribution on the items today. We've had some really important discussions here today. And I really hope that what our discussions provide is evidence to the citizens of Newport that we are working really hard. We are really working hard to ensure that Newport City Council does continue to meet their needs. And we're working hard as a Cabinet to ensure that we listen to what the public of Newport have to say. So we are a listening administration, and we do, as the evidence clearly indicates from our decisions that we've made today, we do listen to what our fellow elected members have got to tell us and to what the citizens of Newport have to tell us. And we look forward to receiving the consultation responses on the budget proposals. And with that, colleagues, I draw this meeting to a close. I'd like to thank you all, and I'd like to thank our officers who've provided all of the reports and information for this particular meeting, because it has meant officers working really hard to prepare information for us at a time really when they should have been spending more time with their families. So I thank you all for your dedication to public service and to the City of Newport. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.